On today's show, we're looking back at the Chicago Bulls and their 2019-20 season. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we're looking back at the Chicago Bulls and whatever nonsense their 1920 season was. So let's talk about these players. But before we talk about the players, let's talk about what the hell's going on in the front office, because they do have a new GM, or whatever nebulous title they're giving them, the president of basketball operations, executive vice president of making shit decisions, whatever the title is the Bulls decide to give these guys. Arturas Karnisovas is in from the Denver Nuggets. The Garpax regime is dead, maybe, sort of. At least they're not fully in control anymore, but you still worry that there's going to be input coming from Pax through to Reinsdorf and screwing this team up. But in good news, not for Jim Boylen and his family, but the Shadow King is gone. He is fired, rightfully so. He was not an NBA level head coach. I don't want people to lose their jobs and their sources of income, of course, but in terms of, are you qualified for this job? Are you good at your job? Then the answer to Boylen is a clear no. The Bulls, like a couple of other teams, still don't have a new coach. Let's see what Karnisovas does in terms of hiring a new guy here. We just don't know at this point, and that's going to cloud a little bit in terms of looking forward for this team as to who's going to be in charge. I think all of the news seems to be surrounding newer head coaches, which I am completely for. Udoka is a name. Adrian Griffin's been out there. Wes Unseld Jr. is a name that's been out there. I'm more than happy to give these younger assistants who have played the game in terms of being an assistant for a long time and having success and seeing how that goes. It doesn't always work out, but I'd like to see them get an opportunity, definitely over Jason Kidd or Mark Jackson or some of those guys, or Mike Brown's name's been floated around for some of the other openings, and Mike Brown's had some success. I'm just not sure that's the direction you want to go for the Chicago Bulls. So I think we're just going to get a first-time head coach would be my guess for this team. We know that they'll probably cheap out, so that means a first-time head coach. But I think in this case, it probably is the best result that they could get is getting someone in there for the first time. Questions from you guys over on the old Instagram. Let's get this one out of the way quickly. Brad Friedman, 15. What is the percentage chance they sign Anthony Davis next summer? It is 0. There is no way. I know Anthony Davis is from Chicago. I don't even know what I'll do. I will do something outrageous if Anthony Davis signs with the Chicago Bulls. There is 0 chance of that happening. Actually, I'll give it more than 0. No, you know what? Screw it. I won't. He's not signing. Forget it. Don't worry about it. A million questions, and that is an exaggeration. A few questions on Lauri Markkanen. Will Lauri Markkanen have a better fantasy season than last season from Sedpool, from Snapshot? So do they trade Lauri? What's his trade value? Karleski, is Lauri Markkanen breakout? Mitch Gray, will Lauri Markkanen bounce back with Jim Boylen gone? There's lots of questions about Lauri Markkanen. Let's put this out there. You know that I haven't been the highest on Lauri Markkanen. I think that his upside is completely neutered by his unbelievable lack of defensive numbers and his poor field goal percentage. But Boylen was shithouse in terms of being a coach that could get Markkanen in the right positions. Markkanen also takes a level of blame for that, for being passive. And yeah, it was a bad season. He had injuries all year, but he played under 30 minutes a night. He shot under 43% from the field and he had a usage of 21%. He should be a 25% guy playing 33 minutes a game, shooting 46% from the field, including 40% from 3. And all those things together push him to be a top 50 guy. Now, I don't think he can ever be a top 20 player, because of the absolute lack of defensive ability, defensive stat ability, passing. All of those things are a worry and getting to the line. But I thought that we saw some improvements from Markkanen, and I do think that you can't get a worse coach than Boylen in for Markkanen, so that's a positive. I worry that the front office does something unbelievably stupid and draft someone like James Wiseman, so they play Wendell Carter at the 4, or heaven forbid, even worse, draft Obi Toppin at pick number 4. That would be an absolute shit show disaster to get for Markkanen's value. I think just in general, picking Toppin at pick 4 would be a shit show. So that's something to watch out for, but I do expect that Lauri will bounce back. I'm not convinced, again, the idea of Lauri Markkanen had the worst season that he could possibly have, let's trade him now, is unbelievable misunderstanding of value if a front office does that, because when his value is as depleted as it is based on what the hell happened last season, the injuries, all his flaws being shown, why would you do that for a young guy on a rookie deal who is 23 years of age? There's plenty still to come, I believe, from Markkanen, who can improve significantly. So yeah, I do think a bounce back is coming. That is the long way around that question. Keston Paul says, what role do we expect from Coby White? He's got a question about Wendell Carter, but we'll get to that in a bit as well. Coby White, I think Coby, he's only 20. He's going to be 21 next season. I think he was massive down the stretch. Overall, his season wasn't good, and that's why he was only a second all-rookie team player, because overall, it wasn't a good season. I think we expect him to come in as a starter immediately. I don't think long-term his role is as a starting point guard. He is not a good starting point guard. He is a good starting scoring guard. He's very much got the Jamal Murray vibe to me, which is fine for Jamal Murray to be a starting point guard, although Murray is a significantly better distributor than Coby White. When you're playing alongside Nikola Jokic, Coby White isn't. So that's my worry there. And I think his best role is going to be a Lou Williams type or as a shooting guard. But for now, the Bulls aren't in that position, so I think he'll come in as the starting point guard and have some pretty significant success. All right, will Wendell Carter Jr. be the Bulls' best fantasy player after Levine next season? That's from Daddy_Mackay or McKee, however you want to pronounce that. I don't know how you pronounce it, Daddy. I think there's a chance of it. I think it probably will end up being probably Coby or maybe Lauri, but I think there's a legitimate chance, and this is maybe hyperbolic, but the Bulls could have Levine, Markkanen, Carter, White, Porter, maybe, all as top 60 players. And because they get their value in completely different areas, it's not impossible to believe that all of those guys could be in the top 60. Carter gets his defensive numbers with some percentages there. Lauri hits threes. He scores his things. Coby White scores. Chucks a couple of assists in there that we know what Levine does. Porter with insane efficiency, high steal numbers, good volume of threes, really, really, big efficiency type stuff. There's a chance, maybe it's top 70, but there's a chance that all 5 of those guys could be there. Now, of course, this year we had one bloke inside the top 90, and that was Levine. So that makes it a little bit tougher, but I think there's a possibility that could happen. Fee_J408. Who's the better prospect between Wendell Carter Jr. and Lauri Markkanen and Dynasty in real life? Everybody, I think, who listens to this podcast knows my answer to this is Wendell Carter. I think he's significantly better as a long-term prospect in real life and in Dynasty as well. It's been rough for him. We talk about Markkanen and Boylen being a rough fit. I think the Carter one, he has really been dicked hard by having Boylen as his coach. I think that Carter is a significantly better prospect. I think he's probably, at this point on this team, still the guy that I think is the best overall player who can develop into a player who can have impacts like Bam Adebayo is having at the moment. Remember, Bam last year was a second-year player playing off the bench behind Hassan Whiteside and really blew up in his third year. Now, I'm not saying Carter's going to be that good, but there's a chance that he can be that good. I really, really believe in Wendell Carter, so that's the way that I would go with that one. All right, let's move on to some questions that did come through on Twitter. There's a lot of similar questions coming through from the old Chicago Bulls, so let's just have a look at what some more of those ones were. Lots of Markkanen questions. Let's have a look. Just one more here on Wendell Carter from Brendan Doss. He says, Carter Jr.'s dynasty outlook, his chances of top 25 output still on the cards. Is it likely good that it happens? I think the chances of it happening are still there. I think probably your median outcome for Carter in terms of dynasty is probably top 40, top 45 now. But still, I'm really, really believing in him, and there is some value there in him. Wendell for most improved 2021. Yeah, massive chance on that. And again, I'm going to give another shout out to Matt Lawson and his Twitter handle at NBA Dynasty ADP. If you're into Dynasty Leagues, go and check it out. Great data, and you can help him out by producing startup data over there for his database. But Matt Lawson says, which, if any of these Bulls Dynasty ADPs are you buying or selling? Levine at 32.5. I would sell the shit out of that. I don't think Levine, who was better than that this year, has that long-term ability to stay around that number. Wendell Carter at 58, much higher than I expected. I think that's probably right on the mark. Markkanen at 74, I'd buy that. Coby White at 82, I'd buy the shit out of that. I think there is great value in Coby White at 82 there. Otto Porter at 93. I reckon Porter at 93, he beats it next season. After that, I'm a bit worried. Chris Dunn at 171. Oh, man, Dunn was really good the last couple of years. I don't know where he fits in the NBA, but defensively, he's one of the best guards in the NBA, pretty clearly. And on steals alone, he almost beats that number. So I think there's value in that. Satoransky at 175. I'm not keen on that. Well, Dan Gafford at 214. I really like Gafford long term. So I'd probably be buying that one. So good question there from Matt. Mr. Lewis has a really good question before we get into these individual players. Do you think every rotation player's ludicrous steal rate is going to drop with Jim Boylen not there anymore? Yes. That is a great point because Boylen was a shithouse coach, right? Absolutely shithouse coach. But one thing he did was he played this weird defensive style. And the Bulls weren't very good defensively. Let's get that out of the way. They had some weird luck, I guess, with their defense. They were the 12th best defense this year, but it was based on this style that was really, really strange, and good teams could easily exploit that. But it was based on getting a ton of steals. Very Jason Kidd-esque in his first season with the Bucks, and then teams figured that out, and they were shithouse. The Bulls were number one in steals this year. So, and a lot of that is the way Chris Dunn plays, but it's also a lot of that was the way Boylen was scheming. So yes, I do think there is a big chance that whoever the coach is doesn't come in and employ that same level of defensive, let's play for steals only, which seemed to be the Boylen mantra. So that is a really, really good point, Mr. Lewis, and I appreciate you throwing that in there. All right, let's have a look now at these players individually in a little bit more detail. And we'll start with Zach LaVine, who I copped a lot of shit for criticizing LaVine. He had a rough stretch at one point during the season. But look, let's be honest, he was really good. And I'm happy to admit that. I criticize players and I praise players all the time. All right, I admit if I was wrong on someone, I still think, and I will admit this with LaVine, that at the time when I said that, he wasn't playing very well. He makes boneheaded mistakes. His defense is almost one of the worst in the NBA. But his ability to be a high volume, massive high volume, 32% usage, high efficiency, 57% true shooting, scoring guard on a bad team, it's really impressive. Right? He improves so much. He averaged almost 26 points a game in 35 minutes. The ACL injury is a thing of the past. I still stand by... And he was shit when I said that, but he improved and he was really good. I still stand by this. I don't know how much or how good of a team you can be with Zach LaVine as your best player. Does he ever contribute to winning basketball? His career so far would tell me no. He's putting up really good numbers, really good offensive numbers, high usage, but his decision making is subpar. His defense, it's not subpar. It's as subpar as you can get. It is horrible. Made some improvements, but he's horrible. Right, so that is a real worry for me. So while he's on this team that's shithouse, LaVine will get opportunities. But really, should he be getting 32% usage while Markkanen gets 21%, while Carter gets 16% usage, while Otto Porter gets 21%, while Coby White gets 24%? How the LaVine-White usage gets divvied up this season is going to be really, really interesting. So that's why I said, LaVine at 32 for Dynasty, I think is a bit of a sell. Because I'm just not sure, if this guy is that long-term player you build around. Now, he's 25. He's still got room for improvement. His advanced stats aren't good. Negative 1.11 PIPM for a guy that's as good as he is, that's not impressive. Raptor's still a negative. Much better than his PIPM, but still a negative, 0.1. That usage and true shooting is a great combination. I just, when he just, at this point, and I hate to say it, but at this point, it just screams good player on a bad team that can't actually make a bad team good. But if other good players come around, he's going to have to take somewhat of a backseat. And I think that's something we always have to look at when looking at these players long term. Now, one thing I have looked at here is to try and figure out when LaVine and White played together, what the usage split was there. Because I think that can be important. 33% for LaVine, 19.6 for White. That is really interesting that it was actually White who took a massive backseat. This is in 750 minutes. That's not a huge sample. A big step back. And it helps that White had a 50% true shooting in that time, and Levine had 57, so he deservedly had that value there. But is that what's going to stick? Is White going to be a below average usage player when he's playing next to Levine? Yeah, that's where I'd have my worry there with Zach. But he was those. If you drafted him, you would have no complaints. Big scoring, big threes, big steals. Back to that earlier point on Boylen. I don't know that sticks. In fact, I'd have some pretty big doubts that it sticks. Free throws, 80% on 5.6 attempts is pretty strong. Although, for Levine, it's actually a little bit disappointing. So when you frame it that way, Levine, who was an 83% guy last year on 6 attempts, he could be better in his free throws. That's a big drop in value there. Losing 3 percentage points and half an attempt a game, that's a big drop. His overall efficiency this year was down from where it was last season. He shot 38% from 3, which is good. But his 3-point volume went absolutely through the roof. He went from 1.9 threes to 3.1 threes. It's all really impressive. But how impressive is he? How good is he on a good team? And that's where I do have some concerns about Zach LaVine. Hey, if you disagree with me on Zach LaVine, and I know there's going to be plenty of you who do, throw it in the comments. Tweet it at me. Tell me I'm a dickhead. Tell me Levine's a legend. Tell me he should be an all-star. I don't buy any of those things, but do it. If I was the Bulls, I would absolutely be interested in trading Zach LaVine if I could get good value back, and then I would draft Killian Hayes at pick number 4 and throw him and Coby White in the backcourt. Let's see what the bloody hell happens with that group. Go with all these 23, 22, 21, 20-year-olds and really develop this rather than Levine, who's a couple of years older than that main core. Still really good, but I'd like to see those other guys succeed. So let's see how it all goes. The second player on this list is Lauri Markkanen, who we know was pretty disappointing last season. He was the 97th ranked player over the course of the season. Under 30 minutes, as I said, 15.6 rebounds, over 2 threes. There's just a lot of concerns there. And there's things that I worried about him when he was drafted. Where the hell are the defensive numbers coming from? That in 3 years in the NBA, it's been the exact same issue, and it's not changing. He's averaged 0.6, 0.6, and 0.5 blocks per game. That's rough. He hasn't shot over 43% from the field. That's rough. He also saw a drop of 5 percentage points in his free throw percentage this year. That's rough. He hasn't shot over 36% from 3 yet. That's rough for a guy that's where your value is. So there's been a lot of disappointments with Markkanen so far throughout his NBA career. Impressively, though, he did get to 54% three-point attempt rate when he'd been at 42 the year before, so attempting more threes. But that usage is terrible. He went from 19 points down to 15 points per game, 25 usage down to 21. He needs to be back in that 25 range, and if he is, that's how he cracks the top 50. Interestingly, his PIPM was better than Zach LaVine, 0.03. His Raptor was decidedly worse, so a big incongruity between those two advanced numbers, which coincidentally are the two advanced numbers that I trust the most. So that gives you some room to look further into these guys and what it means. I still think that Markkanen can be an impact player. He's probably still 2 or 3 years away from getting to his best level. And I still think he's got some value, and his value is at its lowest at the moment. So there is some ability to buy him in a dynasty type setting. I think that there is a real. I want to see what they do in the draft and free agency. I want to see if Kanishevich believes in Markkanen. He could very well not, and I don't really begrudge him of that. So that is really one that we do have to watch to see where Markkanen fits. But a little bit disappointing as a season. He's still only 23 years of age, though. Remember that. Next guy we look at is Chrissy Dunn, the 100th ranked player in fantasy. Just an absolute massive performance from Dunn. Now, I've been critical of Dunn. I was critical of him as the number 5 overall pick. That is absolutely 100% correct. I was critical when people thought that he'd be taking over from Ricky Rubio in Minnesota. That was 100% correct. I was critical when people thought he'd be the savior for the Bulls. That was 100% correct. But I thought he'd be out of the rotation or not on this team this season, and that was 100% incorrect. He was a massive part for this team. He played at small forward at times as a point guard, and he is literally one of the best defensive players in the entire NBA and probably should have made an all-defensive team. Unbelievable defensive play, no doubt about that. And I think the best thing almost about his game is he realized, I'm shit offensively, so therefore I shouldn't take these shots. And that's as good of an offensive thing as you can do. If you are bad at it, don't do it. Now, don't be Andre Robertson and refuse to do it. but don't force it. He had 25 usage in his first year in Chicago. He was down to under 15 usage this year. Focusing on what he can do. Now, he shot an absolutely horrendous 26% from three, but only attempted 2.2 per game. He was out there still attempting some of them. 3-point attempt rate was at 33%. It was at 19 the year before. Still some work needs to be done, but finally got his true shooting over 50%. Yeah, some real strides being made. He went from 44 on twos to 54 on twos. Big steps. The 2 steals is what's impressive. Is that all Boylen? Not necessarily. 1.5 the year before, 2 the year before that. He's a really good steals guy. Out of position, so his assist did drop. I wouldn't want to bank on him as a starting point guard, but he is absolutely a valuable player, and to be a top 100 player in 25 minutes a game is really impressive. And yeah, the PIPM plus 1.35 is great. Raptor plus 2.5 is massive. He's a restricted free agent, so I don't know what sort of offer he's going to get. I'd look to bring him back just to be that third guard or fourth guard on this team, depending on what you do in the draft. But in terms of looking at him for dynasty value, he is 26. He's going to be 27 next season. I think his value is going to drop off pretty quickly. And I think next season is probably going to be the best remaining season of his career. And I don't think that he's going to be someone that we really value. Look, steals will drop off in the next 3 years. And there's no doubt about that as he gets older. So I think there's some real worry about where he ends up in terms of his career over the next couple of years. But a massive season from Chris Dunn, no doubt about that. That's what else there's no doubt about, and that is Built Bar, because it is the best tasting protein bar ever. Built Bar is not one of those protein bars that you find at the supermarket, that you get it and it tastes like you've mixed sawdust with cement. Slurry. It tastes gross, those other bars. Built Bar doesn't. It tastes just like a candy bar. It is covered in 100% real chocolate. It is soft and easy to chew, and they are back better than ever with 6 new flavors: caramel brownie, cookies and cream, cherry barcia, lemon almond cheesecake, apple almond crisp, and carrot cake are back to join the OG 12 original flavors. These bars are low calorie, they're low sugar, but more importantly, they are high protein and high fiber. They're great if you're on a keto diet, and if you're looking to lose or maintain weight, Built Bar is the protein bar that you need to be looking for. And right now, if you go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON, you will get $10 off your next order. So use that promo code LOCKEDON for $10 off at BuiltBar.com. Next player on the list here for the Bulls is Tomas Satoransky. You know that I'm a big Satoransky fan. I think that, when he gets these opportunities to play, he can be a really, really good player. He had moments of top 60 play when he'd fill in for John Wall for the Wizards. This year, I think that rightfully he was given the starting point guard role, and rightfully he gave it up to Coby White at the end. Still wasn't 100% convinced with the way that Boylen had him playing, only 29 minutes a game. And one thing that did drop off completely was his efficiency. He went from a 59% true shooting player down to 53%. He was the 109th ranked fantasy player in those 29 minutes. He averaged 10 points with 4 rebounds and 5.5 assists and 1.2 steals. He's a really strong three-point shooter most of the time, but the volume is just horrible. And this year, the volume was a bit better, but the shooting will drop way off. 32% down from 39%. His two-point percentage dropped way off as well, and that's really why he wasn't able to be that 70, 80 ranked player. If he'd maintained the efficiency from his Wizards days, he would have been in that mix to be a top 70, top 80 player, but he wasn't. He gets steals, he gets assists, he can hit free throws 88%, but he doesn't get to the line. And while he was strong as a starting point guard for the Bulls this season, I just think that's done now. It's going to be White, it's going to be Levine. Hopefully it's going to be someone like Hayes as well coming in there. And I think you should be really cautious about where Satoransky lands from now on. He is going to be 29 really soon as well, so that's a significant worry. I think he can still be a helpful guard, and you're getting Dunn, Levine, Satoransky, White. It eliminates the need for someone like Ryan Archer-Jacquino to be in there, because we don't need him or Big Shaq Harrison playing.
Big Shaq.
But, I worry about, will he ever play 29 minutes a game again? I'd say probably not. I think that's pretty doubtful. And, I guess the presence of him there, depending on what they do in the draft, could mean they do move on from Dunn, but I'm really a little bit concerned here about Satoransky. Hopefully in a smaller role his efficiency can return, because it was way off this season. True shooting just 53% and usage of 17, and he's way too passive. I thought maybe he'd be able to increase his activity offensively, But he just didn't. This is just who he is as a player, and I think we have to resign ourselves to low volume shooting, low usage, and being a really impactful player at times, but just not getting enough of it done. Negative 0.2 PIPM plus 0.2 Raptor is pretty strong stuff, though, for Satoransky. But again, at age 29, I'm just a little bit worried about where that ends up. The next guy we talk about is, one of my favorite players in the NBA, Wendell Carter Jr., who, let's be fair, I'll be fair, I was pretty hyped on this bloke. I thought he could be a top 25 player at some point in his first 5 to 6 seasons. He's been bad. Actually, not true. He's been disappointing. How much of that is him? How much of that is the old egghead Shadow King Jim Boylen? Hard to say. I'd put a fair percentage of the blame on Boylen there. But Carter has definitely got problems. Now, he shot horrible, absolutely horribly in the NBA. He was a good three-point shooter at Duke, but 21% from three this year. The only good thing I can say about that is it's better than the 19% that he shot in his rookie season. He has been completely discouraged from shooting threes, and I reckon that is a big part of why the percentage is so low. Hey, Wendell, don't take threes, you shit at them. I feel like that's what Boylen said, or along those lines. You're not good at threes, don't take them. 0.7 attempts per game both seasons. So he's out there. Do I shoot? I don't know. I'm shit at them. I probably shouldn't. These percentages are bad. There's no doubt about that. But he's 12 of 61. He's taken 61 threes in 2 years. He could take 150 threes this year and hit 60 of them. And I'd be like, all right, let's go. We're back in business here. That's a much better spot to be in. I don't think that's outrageous. He played 29 minutes, 11 points, 9.5 boards. That's a big tick. 0.8 blocks is a little bit disappointing, down from his rookie year. 0.8 steals, 53 and 74 is his percentages. Still managed a true shooting of 59 despite that poor three-point shooting. His advanced Raptor was horrible, minus 2.6, but his PIPM was a positive. He was 114th ranked fantasy player and 16 usage, sorry. The other thing that Boylen did is this guy can pass, but Boylen said, no, you're too big to pass. Ignore what we see in Denver. Ignore what we see on Miami. Ignore what we see in Toronto/Memphis with Marc Gasol. Big men shouldn't pass. Big men should pass. He's one of the best passers on this team. He might even be a better passing decision maker than Zach LaVine and Coby White. 1.2 assists is unfathomably bad. He needs a big step up, and that is why I'm still high on him. I reckon his advanced projection stuff is through the roof. I think he's still 3 or 4 years away from being at his absolute peak, but I think his absolute peak still can be that top 40, maybe top 25. I am not giving up on Wendell Carter at all. I don't think you should give up. Now, the concern you have here is injuries. 43 games this year, 44 the year before. He did play 4 more minutes a game this year. I'm still massively in on Wendell Carter. And I'm not giving up. I think he can be an impactful defensive player. I think he can be an Al Horford, Bam Adebayo, archetype type player, a guy that can pass, a guy that can shoot threes, a guy that can defend, that can rebound, and be one of the best, well, not one of the best, actually the best defensive big man on this team by a considerable margin. I think there's still a lot there. And if they give up on him to bring in James Wiseman, I'd be disappointed. If they push him to the 4, it's absolute nonsense, considering, again, unless he says, no, I actually can shoot and starts doing it, then there's a worry there. But I really do believe still strongly in Wendell Carter. He's only played 2 years. If he still stinks after 2 more years, then maybe I'm out, but I am not out on him at all at this point. Let's talk about Thad Young, who was really a weird signing at the time. Struggled this year for big chunks of the season. 142nd ranked player. The advanced stats are absolutely horrible. Negative 2.5 PIPM, negative 2.1 Raptor, 52 true shooting on 20% usage. He still did his thing with steals, 1.4. That's what he brings, and that's why he was the 142nd ranked player. No other reason. He averaged 10 points, under 5 rebounds. He went back to shooting threes, 1.2 threes a game on 36%, but overall, 58 from the line is gross. 45 for a power forward as a field goal percentage is gross as well. A true shooting of 52% is not going to cut it for Thad. Thad is 32 years of age. He is unhappy in Chicago. He 100% should be traded. He doesn't want to be there. I don't think the team wants him there. I just don't see I don't see a 25-minute a night role for Thad. He can still be a useful contributor on a good team. This is not that, and he was not that much of a useful contributor to the Chicago Bulls this season. His hopes of ever being a top 100 fantasy guy, though, I feel are pretty cooked. Speaking of cooked, Otto Porter, what a Just shit our season from Porter. I thought Porter could really come in and be a top 40 guy this season. They'd play him 33, 34 minutes a night. He'd get steals. He'd be efficient. He'd have a role where his usage increased, which is exactly what happened after he was traded from the Wizards to the Bulls last season. But then we had this mysterious thing at the start of the season. Hey, Otto Porter, who no one has actually reported is injured at all, he's going to be at a minutes limit. And you go, what? What the hell's going on there? And then he played only 14 games. He played only 24 minutes a game. He averaged 12 points. His efficiency was in the toilet. 55 true shooting. Just 70 from the line. Just 39 from three still. Things were weird. His advanced stuff was still good. Plus 0.34 PIPM, a big Raptor, a 21 usage, which is the encouraging thing there from Porter. They have no other three on this team. He has got an absolutely monster player option, 28 million player option. He's going to pick that up. There's no doubt about that. But Otto Porter, I would be floored if he is not inside the top 100 next season. He will play more than 24 minutes a night unless his knees are just cooked or his hip is just cooked, which is a possibility. More his hip than his knee. That's a possibility. His shooting should improve. He should be an 80% free throw guy. He should be a 48% field goal guy. He should be a 40% three-point shooter. He should be a 1.4, 1.6 steals guy. He should be able to average 16 and 5 with 2.6 threes and 1.5 steals and be back in that top 60 mix. After this season, I don't know where the hell he goes. I don't know what happens to him. Do the Bulls trade him? Who's accepting that trade for a start? Or what are you getting back for an expiring $28 million? I'm not really sure. But they don't really have another three there. Are they going to draft Denny Avdia at pick 4? Maybe. Are they going to draft Isaac Okoro at pick 4? Maybe. Are they going to play him 32 minutes a night first out of the gate? I would be really, really doubtful about that. And I think that Porter still has a significant role. Now, he is only 27. He's just turned 27, so he's not old. He's been around forever, but he's not old. And there is still some value there in what Otto Porter can do. So I do think that a bounce back is on the cards for him, but it was an absolutely horrid season from Otto Porter. Let's talk about Coby White, who was a monster down the stretch, but for the course of the season was pretty poor. 200 was his fantasy rank. PIPM, negative 2.53. Raptor, negative 2.5. True shooting, under 51. Usage, 24. All of that stuff is absolutely true. And then he went on a massive tear, had a 3-game run of scoring 30 points. He was hitting threes coming out of his ass. He was absolutely on fire. He only started one game, the last game before the shutdown. 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. But he was playing 35 minutes beforehand. He is going to come in as the starter, I'm almost certain. He had a couple of decent assist games, an 8-assist game, a 6-assist game. He had a 4-steal game, a 2-steal game. But we do have to remember that some of that time where he was getting these big minutes, which started on the 6th of February, there was a really strange, well, not enough strange is the right word, but a team that had pretty much given up in the Bulls, and they were giving him every opportunity to succeed, which is what they should do, but he was doing it at this weird rate of just hitting every shot possible. And I don't believe that that's something we should rely upon, but in that time, as I said, those 13 games when he played 30 minutes a night, he was the 49th ranked fantasy player. He averaged 22 and 5 with 4 rebounds and 3 threes, 91% from the line. I think that he is going to be a pretty strong player in the next couple of years. I think his best basketball is still 4 years away. I think he can be a really, really impactful guy. I think there's a chance he makes, or at least is in an all-star discussion. At least in that discussion at some point in the next 7 years. I think he has multiple top 100 finishes. In fact, I think he's pretty much a lock for the top 100 next season, would be my guess. I worry about where his role is best on a good team. But if you were to tell me when he's 5 years younger than Zach LaVine, if he was to come in behind Zach and be, in 5 years' time, is he a better version of Zach LaVine? I think probably yes. I think he probably is. Defensively, he's got some worries. I think he can be a bit of a better decision maker than what Levine is, and I think he can be as efficient of a scorer. So I think that he can get to that level. I'm pretty big on him long term for Dynasty, and I just don't know that he's a lead point guard unless there's someone else out there who can pass. I think that's probably the worry for him. He needs another high usage guy with him. He needs another distributor with him so he's not forced into taking a shit ton of bad shots. And remember, he was bad for the majority of this season. Really not great. And then put up a massive run, which is huge, and it's all burnt into our heads of how good he was on that run because he was great. Is that a switch being flicked, or is it a hot streak? That's something we have to look for. I still think there is some big value, though, in Coby White coming up. Let's talk about the big fella, Big Shaq Harrison.
Big Shaq.
Advanced stats love Shaq Harrison. 5.6 Raptor is huge. 2.47 PIPM, but 302nd fantasy rank. 18% usage. Ideally, you don't want to be relying upon Shaq Harrison. He's 27 years of age. He didn't even get to the steals in the higher rates that he used to before. That's not true. In the volume before, but he only played 11 minutes a game, Shaq Harrison, and got 0.8 steals. I'm not. He's a free agent coming up for this season, a restricted free agent. I just don't see him being someone that is probably going to be on this team long term. He always seems to impact winning with plus minus and with advanced numbers. He always seems to be that guy. And if he plays big minutes, he's going to get steals. I just don't think as a team that you want to be relying upon Shaq Harrison to play big minutes. Dan Gafford was the 303rd ranked player. I thought that he was pretty impressive for a rookie. 69 true shooting.
Giggity.
0.77 PIPM, negative 1.7 Raptor. They're okay numbers for a rookie. In fact, they're relatively impressive. Gafford played just 14 minutes a game, 5 points with 1.3 blocks, and that's what we could look at. 1.3 blocks on 70% shooting in 14 minutes. He was out of the rotation because Luke Cornett was getting backup minutes earlier in the season, and then Gafford came in. He had some injury problems, but I thought he looked pretty good. Now, he is still 22 years of age. He is older than Wendell Carter Jr., but I think Gafford can be a backup center and be an effective backup center. And I think he can be a starter at some point in the NBA. Whether it's on this team or not, that remains to be seen. But I liked what we saw from him. I think he can be a fantasy contributor, but I'm not putting it in. He's going to be a 28-minute-a-night starter who's a top 60 player. I think he can have maybe a top 100 season, though, in his career. I thought he showed enough. Defensively, still some concerns, and I don't know what he does on offense apart from catch lobs, but you can still make a career out of that if you're in the right role. Next up, we've got the hammer, Denzel Valentine, only the 14 minutes a game, just couldn't really get into the right spot in Boylen's rotation. 7 points per game. I thought his advanced numbers were pretty good, but still the shooting was rough, usage was poor. He just didn't do enough. And he is almost 27. He's going to be 27 really soon. I'm just not sure that as a restricted free agent you want to commit too much to Denzel Valentine. I'm sure he'll catch on somewhere in maybe a Dougie McDermott type of a role. He flashed ball handling in his time at Michigan State. That never really translated across to the NBA, and I wouldn't be super keen on him for his long-term value. Next up is Chandler Hutchison, who was the 327th ranked player this season. He's also, as a second-year player, already 24. He had really poor defensive numbers, advanced numbers, negative 2.27 PIPM, true shooting of 52%. This is a guy who was a 40% three-point shooter at Boise State and was a guy that got a lot of assists, and that just isn't his game in the NBA at all. 0.9 assists in 19 minutes per game, couldn't hit free throws, 32% from three. 2 years into his career, I'm not ready to call him a bust, but he's pretty bloody close to it, to be honest. I'm not really sure what higher level he can get to. In fact, I just don't think he can get to a high level. So I'm really out on Chandler Hutchison. At least he's got small forward size, and you could try him behind an Otto Porter as a backup, but realistically, he is not a good fantasy option, and he just had another poor season, unfortunately. Luke Cornett, Jim Boylen's Robert Lauri, 328th ranked fantasy player, a negative 5.8 Raptor is horrendous. Negative 0.86 PRPM is not that bad. He shows flashes of being a guy that can come in and shoot threes and block shots. He did it again this year, 0.9 threes, 0.7 blocks in just 15 minutes. He shot only 29% from three, though, so really dropped off after his run with the Knicks, where he was a pretty good three-point shooter. Ideally, I don't know what we're doing here. Markkanen, Carter, Gafford, there's your first three big men, and Cornett should be getting just mop-up minutes from there. Not someone you want to rely upon. He is 25 years of age. If he finds the coach that falls in love with him like Boylen did, then maybe you get something out of him, and he can have those weird little runs, but absolutely he is not someone to rely upon. Chris Felicio still got 1 year left on that contract, which is horrible at this point. 4 and 5 he averaged in 18 minutes. Still played 18 minutes somehow in those 22 games. Really bad advanced numbers. True shooting was good. Usage at 9%. I think we just write him off, and I wouldn't be surprised if they waive him this season, eat the salary for the season, and just be done with it. There's absolutely no point in Chris Felicio in the NBA anymore, unfortunately. Ryan Archer-Giacono, for a guy that played as much as he did, all 58 games, he played only 16 minutes, he was a bad fantasy contributor, not a surprise. 360th ranked player. Raptor was a positive, true shooting of 55%. He hit 39% of his threes. The attempts were pretty decent, but if you want to be a good team, this guy shouldn't be a massive part of your rotation. Can he have some winning type plays? Yes. Can he be an impactful guy, much like Shaq Harrison at times? Yes. But do you want to overextend him? God, no. They were playing him as a small forward as well at times this year, given their absolute lack of depth, because they had Porter, Valentine, and Hutchison all injured. They do need to address that wing position pretty significantly, because Valentine and Hutchison aren't the answers, and Porter's not going to be around long term, would be my guess. They need someone else there in the mix. I'm not really sure that Archer-Giacono is the guy they want to look at, and I wouldn't have really any faith that he can become any sort of long-term fantasy option for this Bulls team. I don't know why I just turned the camera off there. All right, let's go to the last player I want to talk about, and that is Adam Makoka. Yes, he's a real player. He only played 11 games, 10 minutes a game. He had that one real weird game where he came in and went bananas at the end of a game, but let's not let that distract us from the fact that he wasn't all that good during the year. 459th ranked player. The advanced numbers make you go, okay. Plus 2.2 Raptor, what's that about? 54 true shooting, not bad. 0.11 PIPM, that's okay. But let's look at what he did in the G League. -3 PIPM is horrible in the G League. He averaged 11 points with 41% shooting on twos. Only 6 rebounds, 1.4 steals. He was not impressive in the G League. His usage was only at 18%. His PER was under 10 in the G League. His true shooting was 48%. If you can't put up impressive numbers there, I'm not really sure what hope to have. He's 22 years of age, so maybe in a couple of years he can do something a little bit better than where he's at. But I wouldn't be banking on it. I just don't see it for Makoka. He is a restricted free agent coming off the two-way deal. And don't get overly excited about that one little role we saw from Adam Makoka. That'll do it for me and the Chicago Bulls. Don't forget to subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. Tell me how stupid I am for not thinking Zach LaVine's an absolute all-star, legend, Hall of Fame type player. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.